You know what's strange? Some of the most emotionally broken adults you'll ever meet don't trace their pain back to strangers. They trace it back to the kitchen table, to a voice they trusted completely, to the person who was supposed to be their safe place. And the damage wasn't always loud. It wasn't always obvious. Sometimes it was just a sentence, a throwaway comment said in frustration, a comparison made without thinking, a promise that quietly dissolved. But the child remembered. The child always remembers. Here's what psychology tells us. The words a parent says to a child don't just pass through the air and disappear. They get stored. The developing brain, especially between ages 3 and 12, is in a phase of intense identity construction. It's actively building the answer to one of the most fundamental questions a human being will ever ask. Am I enough? And the loudest voice shaping that answer, it's almost always a parent's. Psychologists who study childhood emotional development call this process internalization. The child doesn't just hear what you say, they absorb it as fact. They file it under, "This is what I am." And that filing system can run quietly in the background for decades. So what are the specific things toxic parents say that leave those kinds of marks? The first is attacking how a child looks. Words like, "You're too fat," "too skinny," "ugly," "awkward." Comments about a child's body or appearance don't just sting in the moment. They plant something. Research in developmental psychology consistently links parental body criticism to the early formation of body dysmorphia, disordered eating, and chronic physical insecurity. The child begins monitoring themselves the way their parent monitored them. That internal critic doesn't retire when childhood ends. It follows them into every mirror they'll ever stand in front of. The second is mocking how a child moves through the world. Why do you walk like that? Why do you talk that way? Why are you so weird? These aren't questions, they're verdicts. And because children are in a developmental stage where they genuinely believe their parents see reality clearly, they don't push back. They accept the verdict. They start shrinking. They start editing every natural impulse just to avoid becoming the punchline again. And sometimes, that shrinking never fully stops. The third is perhaps the most devastating thing a parent can say. "I wish you were never born. I regret having you." Consider for a moment what that sentence does to a child's nervous system. It doesn't just hurt feelings, it attacks the very right to exist. Psychologists who work with adults who heard these words in childhood consistently report the same patterns: early depression, self-harm, a deep and almost wordless sense of not belonging anywhere. The child didn't just feel unloved, they felt cosmically wrong, like an error someone made and couldn't fix. The fourth is making a child feel like a financial or emotional inconvenience. "You cost too much. You exhaust me. Taking care of you is so hard." What this teaches the child is that their needs are a problem. And a child who learns that their needs cause pain will do something very predictable. They'll stop expressing them. They'll become quietly self-sufficient in ways that look mature from the outside, but are actually survival strategies on the inside. Research from children's health psychology has linked this emotional suppression to later difficulties with intimacy, self-advocacy, and recognizing when they themselves need help. The fifth is comparison. Why can't you be more like your brother? The other kids are better than you. Comparison doesn't motivate children the way parents sometimes hope it will. It does something else entirely. It teaches them that love is conditional on performance, that somewhere out there is a version of themselves they'll never quite reach. The sibling who is held up as the standard doesn't escape unharmed either. These comparisons quietly corrode the relationship between children who should have been each other's closest allies. Now, here's something worth pausing on. None of these things require a parent to be deliberately cruel. Some of the most damaging words in a child's memory were said by exhausted people having terrible days. People who were themselves raised without the emotional vocabulary to do better. That context matters, but it doesn't change what the child stored. And understanding that distinction between intent and impact is where a lot of adult healing actually begins. The sixth is direct verbal demolition. "You're stupid. You're useless. You'll never amount to anything." Absolute language is particularly destructive in a developing mind because it forecloses possibility. It's not "you struggled with this," it's "this is what you are." And when a child hears that enough times from the person they trust most, they stop arguing with it. They start proving it. Not because it's true, but because the brain is remarkably obedient to the story it's been handed about itself. And here's what's important to understand. The child who started proving those words was never broken. They were just handed a story written by someone else's pain, someone else's exhaustion, someone else's unhealed wounds. The words that got stored in you, they were never the truth. They were just the loudest thing in the room at the wrong moment in your life. And loud doesn't mean accurate. Loud doesn't mean permanent. If any of this felt familiar, sit with that for a moment, because recognition is where everything begins. The brain that absorbed those early words is the same brain that can slowly, quietly begin to write something new. Not overnight, not perfectly, but it can. And that's enough. You were never the problem. You were just a child, trying to survive a story you never should have been handed. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to understand yourself deeper, stay with us. There's more.